This meeting is being recorded.
Okay. Well,
Okay.
Mark, I'll let you take it over. I want to thank everyone for showing up today. And I'm going to turn off my camera just so it doesn't slow everything down.
Right on. So today's webinar is CiviCRM Entity Rules. We've been doing a series of webinars highlighting Drupal integration with CiviCRM using the CiviCRM Entity module. And my name is Mark Hanna, CTO at Square. I've been senior developer and architect for a long time here and maintainer of CiviCRM Entity module. So one of the integration features that we get with CiviCRM Entity is integration with the Drupal rules module. And the Drupal rules module is allowing site builders, site administrators to define actions or tasks that conditionally happen based on numerous events. So this may be form submissions, this could be contact updated, membership updated, node deleted, any of the data records, create, update, delete actions. Then we can check conditions of various things. So like, you know, if a contact was updated, was it of a particular type? If it was of a type, do some actions. We may want to send a notification email to like site administrators or CRM administrators. We may want to have other data created or updated. We might want to add contacts to groups. We might want to add user roles. We're going to do a variety of things. And I think most importantly is like these things can be used by non-developers with a little bit of knowledge, and developers can build their site administrators reusable capabilities. So there may be actions or events or conditions that are slightly different. So maybe you want a certain thing to happen on a particular event or event type, but later you want to do the same thing, but it's a different event type. And if developed well, then these tools could be provided to site administrators, and they can perform these tasks or set up these events, these actions without the developer assistance. So more and more these days, developing and being a developer is about providing tools for users to be able to do that. And rules is one of those. What's about? I've linked to the project page in this presentation. You can learn more about rules. And we're going to do some live demo and some things here to help illustrate these things. So I'm going to talk a little bit. So CiviCRM Entity defines or integrates these CiviCRM data types or entity types as Drupal entities. And then when you do that, you automatically get some stuff for free. So like without any customization, without developers creating more tools, you do get quite a bit. So reacting to the create, update, delete, view operations is one of those things. So there's a lot that can be done out of the box. And we often do it for things like memberships, like maybe somebody gets a membership, add them to a group, tag a contact, you know, add a user role when they're registered for an event, very common. And then of course, sending out emails, notifications on the screen when certain times, so notifications for the user on the screen, another big reason. So CiviCRM Entity also provides some additional functionality that's more than just the stock Drupal core and Drupal rules. And we've developed these because we've needed them for various sites. And these are like checking, these are conditions. So we want to check some things before we take an action. So maybe we want to check and see if a contact's in a group. So we limiting, you know, maybe the contact was updated, but if a contact is in a group, we're going to do a certain thing. We often need that connection between the Drupal world and the Civi world, and that connection often comes through the Drupal user to UF match to CiviCRM contact record. And we provided conditions, so like check to see, does a Drupal user exist for a contact, right? maybe you only have a contact ID in the rule in the data provided by the event, and you also want to just check to see if that Drupal user exists before you do a certain thing. Maybe you actually want to create a user if it doesn't exist. So you want to check to see if the user exists first, so you don't try to do something that has already happened. So gets a little complicated. Like, what is this load user object? What does I mean by this? And if you want to take actions on a user, so let's say you wanted to add a user role. So contact is updated. It passes the conditions. So contact is of a type that you're checking for. Then maybe you load the user for that contact so that you can then use some stock rules actions like add a user role, send an email to the user, things like that. So those are very common needs for organizations using the rules module, and so those are provided in CiviCRM Entity. For developers, so we are going to get a little deep into the code here. And I think that, though, if we see it, we see, if you know, oftentimes in the code is like this, you need to have a framework, you need to know the few necessary lines of code, and then inside of that is where the real action is that's different per case. And we can learn about that. There are plenty of resources out on the web. This Rules Essentials for Developers is a good one, or just the API reference. And this can help developers get started for more complex use cases. So I thought, well, maybe the best way to illustrate this is just to do it and to show it. And so I thought, I had a client here that needed something very similar to this. So it's basically a contact review system. So how can we have a way for site builders to build a system where if contact needs review and certain actions could happen after the fact. So this is verifying and noting in the system that a site admin has reviewed a contact. As we all know, sometimes we get spam, or there may be other reasons why we need to filter. Maybe you have a web form and somebody's applying for something and you want to check to see if a contact is applicable for the situation. So in this example, I just keep it simple, and we can talk about how this could be expanded and other things, but we want a way to be able to create an activity of type contact reviewed when a certain custom field is updated. And I picked this because this particular situation is not covered like in a core setup. Maybe this code could or methods could go into it, add to the CiviCRM Entity module. So it's good to show, but maybe you have a custom field on the contact, and it could be a select list, and maybe you have several options. Maybe when a contact is created, the default value is not reviewed. And then later, when you admin checks the contact, they go and update the custom field, they set it to reviewed, and then we need stuff to happen. So this could be creating an activity, but this could be sending an email, it could be adding to a group, it could be various other things. So talk about how we can build that. So let's dig into it. And so I have a rule. Well, let's start here. So I have a rule here that I've built. So I want to create an activity on status update. And you'll see here this event right here says contact status updated. So this particular event is not out of the box. So we know this is a custom field, and this language here is very specific to the use case. So we can define events with human language that actually mean something to site builders when they look at it and they see it. So okay, contact status is updated. That makes sense. We're going to do something. So I'm going to edit the rule and just kind of briefly look at what it got going on here. So when the contact status is updated, I want to check was the value set to, which we'll look into it. That's like the value that's saved in the database when we have a value reviewed on a custom field. And this is custom. I built this custom field. I set the values. This could be any values. And a site builder later could add another option and have a different value and then have a different rule and use the same tools that are here to build it. Now, this data comparison is a stock condition that comes with Drupal rules. So that's just checking, does a value on this data, like this contact or this field, does it equal the value that we enter, right? And I also wanted a condition to say, like, I don't want to create this activity if an activity is already created. I already have this. This field could be part of a set. There could be situations where this field is updated multiple times for whatever reasons, and we may not want to have a whole list of activities on the contact. So we just want the one. And so if it has an activity, we're not going to do it. So it's like, so we're saying not contact has this activity. We'll look a little more into how these are constructed, that's what's going on. Then when it's done, I want to create an activity. So there is a stock way to like create an activity without this custom action that I made. So this contact has activity, this create activity action, and this event were provided by this example module that I posted. And we'll look at. So I wanted very bespoke custom functionality. I wanted to provide an easy to use tool for the site builders. And so the choice to me was to create a few of these custom conditions, custom actions along the way. So like, and I'm going to show it work. So I have a contact and I have a custom field. And when I change the value to reviewed and click save, and now it's gonna, I have to refresh my page to see that there's one activity right now, and when I refresh, there's gonna be two. And so live demo worked. And I can see that my contact reviewed activity was created. And so kind of a simple case, but this could be expanded. We could use these same tools to have different conditions. So let's say that we wanted to do some actions for any of these statuses. We could start using these tools to create different activities. Maybe we want to send an email. Maybe if it's spam, we want to delete the contact or delete the users, and all this stuff can come together to where the tools are available to do those various things. Maybe 2 years later, the use case changes a little bit. Maybe the value of the status field needs to be something different. The rule could be edited by a non-developer to make that possible, and site administrators can use that functionality for that case or other cases. Okay, so how was this done? So I'm going to kind of go with the slides, but and it's all there. I'm trying to explain it in that way, but I had created this module right here just as an example to like, how was this done? And to hopefully illustrate that it's not too complicated. So the first thing that happens when rules is you're reacting to events. So you need to define these events. There are events defined in rules core and CiviCRM entity because of the integration as a Drupal entity type, but maybe we want others. In this case, it's a very specific event. We like, if this custom field, just this custom field is updated, we want to do it. I don't want to do it when other things happen or just when the contact, it's only when this custom field is updated. So we need to define an event object. So Drupal needs to know some information, be provided with some information when this event happens. So this object here defines that event. And there's a couple things we need to set as a developing these things. the namespace, the name of the module. This is the machine name of the module. So this code could be used for other use cases. You just have to change a couple of things. So this machine name here, you change that to the name of the module. This class name is should match the file name up here, and it goes in a particular directory, source event. Then this is the name of the object, .php. We use that same name here. Drupal also needs a machine name for the event, and we'll look at why that is. And then we need some data that's the same every time this event triggered, even though the values itself may be different, is the contact ID and the value of the field. So when the field was updated, what was the value given to that field? So all we're doing is basically defining metadata. What are the types of this data? Is it an integer? Is it a string? And setting up this object. And this object in object-oriented code is the way that rules is able to take this object and pass it around, pass the data around to the condition processor, to the actions, and in a consistent format. So, but as a developer coming along, wanting to do something different to create an event, change this, maybe different name, change the file, change this name right here to some unique event name. And then we're just setting these object properties from what is passed in when this event object is constructed. And we'll look at that when is that constructed. So far so good, fairly simple, just a few things. So I've got here the actual code that fires this event. So this is going to trigger that this happens. So in CiviCRM, or just back up in Drupal and CiviCRM, we have what is called hooks. Hooks are functions that are executed. So you can have the same hook in multiple modules. When the system fires off that says execute all hooks, it goes around to each module and executes that code in that hook. So I have my module, CiviCRM entity rules example. I want to so it's called implementing. I'm implementing this hook, CiviCRM custom, which is this definition is always the same for every hook in every module or CiviCRM extension. And I'm checking to see, is this column name? So is this particular field? And the unique thing about it is its column name, where the data is stored in the database. It's like, okay, if is that column name, if that custom field was updated, I'm going to create my event object and I'm going to dispatch that event to the system. And then Drupal and rules will execute all the necessary code all over the place to make that happen. So it's 3 lines. I instantiate my object. I pass it the entity ID, which is the contact ID, because this particular custom field set is on or associated with the contact entity. And I'm also checking to see if the field has a value. Like if somebody was updating a custom field set, maybe some other fields hadn't set this value, then we still don't want to do anything, right? So we're only going to take the system's only going to take action if there's actually a value. We're going to pass that off to the event. So we've triggered that. We've instantiated the object. We've loaded our service. This is a service is just like, it's kind of like, imagine like you need some plumbing done, you go to the plumber. So it's like, I need some events dispatched, so I go to the event dispatcher and I dispatch the event. So easy enough. So now that's telling rules, hey, I need to do something. I need to look around and I need to find its conditions. I need to evaluate those conditions. I need to find the actions and I need to evaluate the actions. I forgot one thing. So there's some things like, where is that text that we saw? So we had the text, like, what is this rule? I have this here. So you can have the human readable name. You can add that name to anything. We can say, okay, what category? We'll go through and create another event and or another rule. But when you create a rule, you get a list of events, and there can be hundreds of them. So you want to organize those and put those into categories. And it makes sense that this goes to the contact category because we're dealing with contacts. So you see here, this is context definitions. This is telling us type information and what what variables, what data does those conditions, do those actions have to act on? And that is the contact ID and status options that we did define in our event object. So the purpose here is kind of to define the type, but it's also to give those human readable names, right? So if you don't want to change anything about how it works, but you want to change what these values are, you can just come to this one file, change that, and good to go. So we defined our event. We defined the data that the event receives and passes along to the system. And now we've triggered that event to fire. So now we go back to our rule. So we've handled and described this portion. So this is when this event happens. Now it's if this stuff is valid. So if the value of the field is reviewed, and I might as well show you. So I've got my field, multiple choice options, and I have my values that can be for this field. And you see here, reviewed has a value of 2, right? So now we're matching along. So if this status option has a value of 2, that passes that condition, right? So then also, does the contact already have an activity of this type? And we can edit one of these and see what the site builder can do about it. We could, where do I derive the value of the contact ID, right? And this is coming from the event. So when I've defined those in events, those values are automatically populated. If I was to remove this, you would see that there's other values, but you see my 2 pieces of data that I defined in the event are here already. So I can say, one of them I want to check is a contact ID, and then the other, so like, does this contact have an activity of this type? And I just I created an activity type, and I put the value in here. Now this condition could be used for checking many scenarios. It could be used for checking if an activity of any type exists in any rule for your use case. So then, so now we've got a piece of code that can be useful in many, many situations, right? And whatever other business use cases or events, we can have a rule. We can just set whatever activity type ID. So if this contact has an activity of this type, then it will evaluate to true, but I'm negating it. I want it to be true if it doesn't have one, right? Not if it does have one. So then I negate that condition, and this negation is part of core rules that comes about. So, but we need to define, we need to create our custom condition, and how do we do that? So in Drupal, as a plugin system, you can define plugins. These conditions or these rules conditions are just a type of plugin, so that we can put that in the right place. So I always is going to have in any Drupal 8+ module, you're going to have a source directory, and then if you want to have that module needs to have plugins, there's a plugin directory. And then we go to what type of plugin it is, and we have a directory for that. In this case, condition. And inside of there, we have our specific plugin, and we name it contact has activity. So that makes sense. And again, there's a bunch of code here, but for different use cases, it's really just changing a few things, right? So we have our namespace. We have the machine name of the module. We could change that. All this stuff here could be used in basically any rule condition. I am using the CiviCRM API service, which I'm injecting into this object, but if you're doing CiviCRM related things, you're probably going to want that. And so this could basically be used. The thing you may change for this to have other plugins and other conditions is what the context definitions again. So these is the value that it was, again, configured in the activity. And how do we receive that information? So we're receiving this information from the user, saved to the database, passed to the object when the condition evaluates. So It's pretty simple. You got a data type, you got a name of the variable, and then we have our, this is where this language here, this activity type, these words, this is what rules use to get these rules, these words right here. So we can define as many of those different as you need for your case. Add the context definition. Now, if you have complex data types, dates, or maybe even arrays of things, there's that's where you visit the rules documentation. How do you define other types of context? And I'm just going to skip down like all of this stuff here. You could say, okay, this is the name. Again, this class name matches the name of the PHP file. All the rest of this, though, could be the same. And then we have one method in here, do evaluate. So this is actually doing the evaluation. So I'm like, okay, I'm just going to double check that the contact ID is not empty. It has a value. It's numeric. Maybe somebody enters in maybe a site builder enters in some faulty information here, like the letter A, whatever, that could get validated out, but I'd like to check. And so we're just making a simple CiviCRM API call. I'm saying, hey, is there a contact? Is there an activity with that contact ID of that activity type? If there is, return true. If there's not, or there's an error, return false. And so, okay, pretty simple. So we've wrapped up this simple logic in the object plugin structure that's necessary, and now we have a condition. Okay. And I think we zoom through this. Feel free to reference this thing. All of that. A little bit of context definitions for the developers. Use the dependency injection. If you don't know what it is, look it up. This is just like a systematic way for objects, plugins, services to receive other services and code, and Drupal will automatically handle the instantiation, and there's actually ways to customize these things so that your plugin can always receive the service that it should get based upon the system and any customizations or one of the hundreds of modules that may affect how things work. So there's just this one way for your plugin to do what it needs to do to get the right service, and you let Drupal worry about the complexity of what is the actual object or the modifications to that object that are coming to it. Okay, we talked about that. So now we get to the action. This is, we're actually doing something. The event's been triggered, conditions evaluated, it passes. Now we want to execute. We want to do the thing that we intended to do. So all of this plugins and the name and the namespace and all that stuff is very much the same, right? We're okay, I'm gonna go back to here. So how do we're extending this rules condition base. So what type of object it is, this is what receives that information. So the name of the object extends this type of object, this is a rule condition base. And now we're gonna look at our action. And it's very similar, naming, all the stuff is the same. And really the difference here is that we're getting a little more context definition. So we're getting that contact ID that we're passing through. We're getting that activity type that we said. So what type of activity? But we added a subject. Maybe we want the site builder to be able to set the subject of that activity. So I'm going to show you where this matches. And this is where, so site builder can add this action and say we're going to get our contact ID, which is passed around from the event, and but we're manually entering, so we want the subject to be contact reviewed. This could be anything. You may want to change it later. You may want to create a different type of activity from some other context, have different subject, different activity type. Site builder can enter those things. So we can see here, this matches my file name, and I've extended the rules action base. So it's just a different plugin type. Again, I'm just going to skip through all this stuff to how to set up, and then we have our one little bit where we actually do something unique. And so all we're doing here is saving an activity with those values that we passed in. So really, logic very simple. Like once you have all this accoutrements here that you need to get it going, then just making a new one, no problem. Right. So that's that. Very simple. So then we put it all together. We have a rule, and we can use it to do anything. So now we could build any number of rules and do different things. So we could have a different event, maybe different custom fields, different situations. It could be something completely different. It could be like users logged in, or membership for a user is created. We could check to see if the user has that activity with that, and or the contact has that activity, and then create an activity of a different type from using this tool or these tools. Okay, so that is a fairly technical example of how to build custom rule stuff. And I'm a little short, but if there's any questions anybody has, I'm happy to answer them.
That's great, Mark. I've seen this scenario before of having some kind of like approval process. So I know some memberships, they have like paperwork that needs to be reviewed and stuff like that. And sometimes there's not like a set period of time that they can get that done. So having some sort of like flagging approval system is pretty cool.
Absolutely. So I've posted these. We'll post it out the YouTube video, the link to the presentation, the words, link to the module file. I've installed this module obviously on this site locally to be able to do this example, so it definitely works. Would be CiviCRM Entity 4.0.x, and Drupal 10 should work on Drupal 9 though, really. So very little difference.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. I know some of this may be a little technical for some people on the call, but I think the key thing is to understand this idea of rules and how there is just think of ideas of what can be triggered based on some sort of other action. So having that idea of the concept of what's possible with rules can help trigger some other feature ideas for you that you can hopefully share with us, and we can work to build something cool.
Sure. And if there's, we get requests from clients, we help handle their bespoke situation, their very unique situation to them. And sometimes we recognize that scenarios and business cases for a particular client could be, if abstracted, very useful for many people. And so we're always looking for that, to harvest those ideas, to put that stuff in a general way in a module that can be shared with everybody, so that the investment and the time that one organization can be leveraged for any organization, and that goes for you too. So like all the software we're using, and many organizations, anybody using the CiviCRM and Drupal ecosystems, they're taking advantage of a lot of time and effort that was put in by other people for their specific use cases. So it's like a family, like we all help each other. Your case gets met, that can help other people's, then they don't have to invest in that. They can invest in even pushing it down the road, making something better, further, more complex. And it just keeps building year after year.
Now, Mark, I know some people here may still be on Drupal 7. Is there any concerns or anything that they should know about how this would work differently in Drupal 7, or maybe even some benefits of using Drupal 10 to do something like this versus Drupal 7? Anything related to like Drupal versions that anyone should consider?
Yeah, so conceptually of the logic of what's going on is the same. So between Drupal 7 and Drupal 10, you could develop these for Drupal 7 and have it interacting with your CiviCRM database. You want to upgrade to Drupal 10, The code for the module code does have to be redeveloped. The difference between Drupal 7 and it was really Drupal 8 and forward was does need to be redeveloped. So how that's done for Drupal 7, which is very similar, it's honestly it's wrapping it all up in this object-oriented notation instead of like a functional notation. So just functions in a file versus objects. So
But as
this
far
is
as
back.
the website side of things go, the user interface is the same.
Yeah, it's very, very, very much the
So
same from the user perspective.
these
Yeah.
files may need to be updated for their particular use case, but once all that stuff is in place, or even if they just wanted to use some of the features like already available in rules with CiviCRM and Civi,
Yeah,
they should be able
absolutely.
to
Because
follow along here.
the stuff out of the box too, like the create when things are created, updated, deleted, all those events are there in Drupal 7 or Drupal 9 or 10. And so if you're doing stuff in Drupal 7, all of that can apply to Drupal 10. If you need custom development, those things are redeveloped. There's sort of a migration for rules that were site built in Drupal 7 to Drupal 10. If you have under 50, it's probably cheaper and easier just to manually rebuild the rules, like come in here in the interface and do it. So if you have hundreds, maybe think about a migration process. But yeah, very much the same. And the business case is all the same. And if you're doing something in Drupal 7, the same thing can be done in Drupal 10. Absolutely.
Mark, if you could pop open the chat, Jonathan has a question here about using, I guess, kind of two parts here, like HTML and emails in rules and tokens. So I know, I think there's different actions or something to maybe allow HTML emails. You maybe want to touch on an example of like maybe an out of the box rule we could create to send an email, and maybe it doesn't necessarily have to be related to CiviCRM, but maybe we could just create an email rule or something.
I know for a fact that we built for a client a custom rule action that actually sent the mail through CiviCRM. And
so you got an activity and everything.
Yeah. And I haven't put that out open source because it's like it wasn't like 100% generic to my satisfaction, but it's very close. Like it could totally be put here and used for a different use case. So that's very common. And whether Drupal, I don't know if this is Drupal 7 or Drupal 10. I mean, Drupal needs a little something to send HTML emails. Like by default, it kind of keeps itself simple, but it can be done. We're using a module called Symphony Mailer, and we're moving to that. And you can enable that all emails to be HTML. And I don't know if the user interface is giving you an error like, hey, there's HTML in it or not. And you can definitely have rich text fields to have HTML. Now, maybe you want CK editor, right? Maybe you want the WYSIWYG. I think I'd need to code up a little something to be able to do that, but that can also be done to make it be CK editor. And I've used it like with Drupal tokens or Civi tokens too, because if you know Civi, your tokens are kind of a little different format than what's in Drupal. And I've actually done something where you can have both. This is pretty cool. Yeah.
You went right where I was about to go. So it would be possible to use Civi tokens. It's not just purely like the Drupal replacement tokens options.
Yeah. Can be done. We just haven't, again, it's just not made generic and released open source yet. And that sometimes that happens, like maybe we get a request and we don't have the budget or time or to take it that extra few hours to make it general and useful to everybody else. But then it's there, we know it, and then it's like the second time we do it, that time could be spent making the generic way to do it.
So right now with kind of core modules installed or out of the box like Drupal and CiviCRM entity, what's possible in the form of tokens? Like, can we send emails with like the regular Drupal tokens, or is there need to be some sort of setup to use any kind of token?
Yeah, I think with the so if there is a stock action send email to a user, right, and that particular action can process the Drupal token. So like username, user email, stuff about the Drupal record, and I should mention that there is a CiviCRM rules extension that is native to CiviCRM, which conceptually does very much the same thing, except for it's only Civi native things, right? And very useful. Plugins, actions can be added. We maintain CiviCRM Entity. That's where we focus a lot of our open source development. Conceptually, it's very much the same, and I like it because you can get to do both things. You can do Drupal stuff and CiviCRM stuff. So, but in the Civi native rules, then you could have like out of the box send an email and have uh, Civi tokens there, right? But again, it's not. It's like a little bit of work to get it to go in Drupal.
Okay. I see. Jonathan says thanks. So I think you answered his question.
Yeah, sure.
All right, I'm going to put this link in chat to Civi rules real quick. So this is what Mark was referring to. This is a totally separate extension, separate from CiviCRM entity or anything that we reviewed today, but has similar type features. So something you might want to look into if you're curious.
Very useful, and it could be useful to have both. Right on. Well,
okay, well, yeah, if and nobody else has any questions, we'll be uploading this to our YouTube channel. We'll put it on our website in a blog article. We'll send an email out to everyone with the link to that so they can share it with their friends. Other than that, just I think many of you are already on one of our mailing lists for these webinars, so just be on the lookout for future ones coming. We don't have one scheduled yet, but we've been trying to do these the second Tuesdays of the month. So that would be probably June 11th, possibly. So just be on the lookout for any emails letting you know that we're hosting another one. And you can always go to our website, square.com/training. And we'll keep that webpage updated with any upcoming events. And you'll also find links to the past webinars too, if you need to see a recording. All right. Well, thanks, Mark. It was a great webinar.
absolutely. Thanks, Brian. Thanks,
All
everyone.
right. Thanks.